Hi, myself Rakesh, and I'm super excited to teach you SQL or SQL. In this course, you are going to learn everything to get started with SQL. First, we will get an introduction to SQL and install the necessary tools to write our first SQL query. By the end of the course, you will learn from basic to advanced queries in SQL. This course is packed with tons of exercises which will enable you with hands-on experiences. There is a table of content which you will find in the video description down below, so you can quickly jump to specific tutorials. So let's get started. SQL stands for Structured Query Language. Is a programming language used to store, retrieve, and manipulate data in relational databases. Now, what is a relational database? I'm going to show you. Before that, let's understand what is the right way to pronounce SQL or is it SQL? Let me give you a bit of history. IBM originally named the database management language as SQL, which stands for Structured English Query Language. That's how many people today they pronounce it as SQL rather than SQL. The name was changed to SQL later to avoid an trademark issue with Hawker Siddeley Dynamics Engineering Limited, which is basically designs and manufactures aerospace components and systems. So later, the current name is SQL. The pronunciation of SQL is topic of debate, with some still preferring to call it as SQL and the others preferring it to call it as SQL. Generally, the non-English speakers call it as SQL and the English speakers would like to still call it as SQL. It's up to you. That doesn't literally bothers any of us. So you can call either SQL, even that is correct. If you would like to call it as SQL, that's even okay. A database. Now let's understand the structured query language. So we heard a term database. A database is simply collection of data stored electronically. To give you a simple example, let's say you have an Excel with many rows with many columns. Now imagine it has a tabular data which you can refer as a simple example to imagine, okay, it's a simple data, a collection of data is called a database. To create, access or manage such databases, we use a software called DBMS. What is it? To create access, to create a database, to access certain data that is already present in a database, to delete a table, to create a new table, something like that, right? To create, access or manage databases, there are softwares. And these softwares are called DBMS, or stands for Database Management System. Database Management System is a software to create, access and manage databases. And what is database? Database is a collection of data stored electronically. There are several database management softwares. And there are two main categories. You will hear this term relational database management system and you will hear another term called non-relational database management system. So popularly called as RDBMS and the other one popularly called as NoSQL. Now what is a relational database? With the word relation, that means the tables that are there inside the database are related to each other. What does that mean? For example, here on my screen, you have a customer table. And the customer ID is a primary key. You have a product table. Product ID is a primary key. For example, if you are an employee, your employee ID is a primary key. That means a unique key only given to you. Similar way, the tables has a primary key, a customer ID and the customer name, customer's email address. That customer ID becomes primary. Similar way for product table. Now look at the third table, which is order table. There we have order details ID as a primary key. And it has got few foreign key which is coming from the other two tables. Customer ID is a foreign key. Product ID is a foreign key which is coming from the product table. Now with this, what happens in the orders details table, that it can know with this customer ID who is the customer associated with this order. What is the product? With the product ID, I can know what is the product name of the order. So like this is called a relational databases. This is just an example to understand what is a relational database. Now, this is what you will be learning in this course. You will be learning this SQL query. How can you write a SQL query through which you can extract, create, manage, access? How can you do all of this with this SQL or this programming language? We are going to learn in this video. Now, there are many RDBMS softwares. The popular one is the MySQL. You also have others like Microsoft SQL. You have Oracle database. You have IBM DB2. Like that, there are many softwares. The Relational Database Management System softwares. DBMS stands for Database Management System. It's a software. So you have many softwares. Now, out of all this, the popular one is the MySQL or MySQL. According to most sources, MySQL is considered the most popular open source database management system. So this is the software which is very, very popular. Now, all RDBMS uses a structured query language. All of the softwares, even though they are from different vendors, they use structured query language or SQL to query and manage data. Through each system has its own SQL dialog. However, because the vendors are different, the softwares are different, there are a bit of differences with their unique syntaxes. Let me show you what. For example, if I'm using the MySQL software or the RDBMS system, in that case, if I have to pull the top 10 records from a table, let's say imagine it's a customer table. So the query looks something like this: select star from customer limit 10. If I'm using Microsoft SQL Server, there I would be writing the query with slight change. Select top 10 star from customers. So instead of limit 10, here I'm using top 10. If it is Oracle database management system, in that case, select star from customers. So what is very common is your SQL query. There are few dialects or the SQL dialects, that means based on the vendor, there are few keywords that you may need to know. For example, here Oracle is using fetch first 10 rows only. Most of the SQL code that you learn in this course will work with any database management systems. There will be few dialects, that's fine, but the overall knowledge is going to help you. Now in this course, we are going to focus on this software called MySQL. Now you heard about relational database management system. There is also another database management system which is called NoSQL. Now what is this NoSQL or SQL? NoSQL is a type of database that stores data in a non-tabular format. So that uses a tabular format. Here it stores the data in a non-tabular format rather than in tables like relational database management system. NoSQL does not use SQL. It doesn't use SQL. Instead, using different data models and query languages. So this is not our focus for this course. Now in this course, we'll be focusing on SQL with MySQL software. I have put a lot of efforts to create this content. Please do not forget to like and share this video with all your friends who would like to learn SQL. Thank you very much, and let's get started. To install MySQL, go to the browser and I'm going to search for MySQL or SQL. I'm going to click on this and In this link, there is something called downloads. I'm going to click on this. I'm going to scroll down and look for MySQL Community GPL downloads. I'm going to click on this. And here you would have many different options. Out of all this, you would look for the MySQL installer for Windows. This is the word you have to look for on the page. Now, once I have this is again, I'm doing the installation for Windows, the Community Edition installation on the Windows. Here I'm going to select the latest available version. So here I'm installing 8.0.41. Based on the time you're watching this video, the version might get upgraded. You can select the highest available version here. And here I'm selecting Microsoft Windows because this is my operating system. Here you have two different options. Windows x86 32-bit MSI, 32-bit MSI. This also has a 64 version. I'm going to show you. But again, here it has got something called Web Community. And here it has got something called Installer Community. So which one to choose from? So Web Community has certain web components, and this is more like a desktop installation. And if you see, the MB is also larger. I'm going to select this one, the below one, which says MySQL Installer Community without the word web. I'm going to hit on download. Now the download would take certain time. After this, you come to this particular page. Okay, the download has not started yet. You have to click on no thanks, just start my download. You can sign up, but here I'm going to skip it. I'm going to simply say no thanks, just start my download. Once I click, the download has begun. Let's wait for the download to complete. Once the download is completed, I need to click on this MySQL installer. You might get a user control prompt. Click on it. Okay, and this is what it will appear. Now here in this one, MySQL installer, there are multiple options. Because I wanted to do a custom installation and see where it's getting installed and what I'm installing, I'll go with the custom installation. Manually select the product that should be installed on the system. And I'm going to hit on next. On this page, you have got three different sections: MySQL Server, Application, and Documentation. I'm going to click on this plus sign, MySQL Server. I'm going to select on the plus sign MySQL Server 8.0, and I'm going to select the x64 version. This is what I was talking about. So 8.0.41 x64 version I'm going to install, and then I'm going to minimize this, and I will go to the application, and in the application I need the Workbench. Similar way, I'm going to click on the plus sign and select the latest available version here, 8.0.41 x64. Hit on this arrow, then minimize this. The next thing you have under the application is MySQL shell. I'm going to click on this. Similar way, I'm going to select the highest available version of the shell. Okay. Now, what is this Workbench? Workbench is your UI on which you will be working, the user interface, and this MySQL shell is more like a command line prompt where you will be working. Okay. So these are the three things I have installed. Documentation I'm avoiding. So these are the three important things what we need. And there's also something called MySQL router. For the moment, I don't need it, so I'll just go with these three products. Enable the select feature page to customize product features. So leave it as it is. I'm going to hit on next. And then these are your products ready to install. I'm going to hit on execute, and all of this will be installed. So let the execution complete. For me, it took almost like 5 to 10 minutes, and the installation is complete. Here I'm going to hit on next. And here it says MySQL Server 8.0.41 product configuration. We now walk through a configuration wizard for each of the following products. Okay, fine. Just hit on next. Now here it will have certain things: development computer, server computer, dedicated computer. So you should go with the development computer if you are using your personal laptop. This is a development computer, and many other applications will be installed on it. A minimal amount of memory will be used by this one. If you keep it as server application will running on this computer. Choose this option for web or application server. So we are not anyways going for this. Dedicated computer, the computer dedicated to running the MySQL database server only. So of course not. So we'll go with the development computer, and these are the default options. We would leave it as it is. 3306 X protocol 330036 open Windows firewall ports. So these are the default configuration required. I'm going to leave as it is, hit on next. Next is it is telling you use a strong password encryption for authentication. So keep it as the recommended one. I'll leave it as it is and hit on next. Here it is asking for the setting up the password. The word you will hear MySQL root password. Root meaning admin. Root means admin. So here you have to set up a password. A strong password is recommended. I'm going to set my password. And I'm going to retype the password. And then once it is done, it says weak, you can have a strong password, but I'll leave it as it is at the moment. And then I'm going to hit on next. The add user, create MySQL user accounts for users and applications, assign a role to the user. So currently I don't need that. So I'm going to hit on next. Windows services, configure MySQL server as a Windows service. And the Windows service name will be MySQL 80. You'll be able to see it in your system startup and you will be able to see in your task manager. This is the name. Standard system account, custom user account. So leave all the things as it is, hit on next. Server file permission. So if you see, MySQL installer can secure the server data directly by updating the permission of files folders located at C drive, program data, MySQL, MySQL server 8.0 data. So this is where inside your program data folder things are there. So yes, grant full access to the user running Windows service if applicable and administrator group only. So leave it as it is, hit on next. Now all this configuration has to be set up. Writing configuration file, updating Windows firewall rules, everything that you have selected, and I'm going to hit on execute. All the ports, everything was there in the previous window. Now all the setups has to complete. Okay, so the execution has completed. Now I'm going to click on finish. And now MySQL Server 8. Product configuration, hit on next again. And here it is saying installation has completed. The installation procedure has been completed. Start MySQL Workbench after setup. As I said, Workbench is a UI user interface for MySQL, and MySQL shell is a command line prompt. So keep it as it is and hit on finish. And then you can see the MySQL shell has started, and this is the Workbench, the user interface of MySQL Workbench has started. Just after this, the very important task is to set the environment variable. Now, what is this environment variable? I'll let you know. Let's say I'm going to open the command prompt. I have installed SQL. Now let me type a command MySQL hyphen version. What I'm saying, MySQL hyphen version I have typed. If I hit on enter, MySQL is not recognized. Why it is happening? Because you have not told the system where the executable files are present. If you want to run a command on your command prompt, Windows command prompt, you have to tell the Windows where the executable files are present. Now for this, what you have to do, simply hit on Windows and type environment variable. So this is, click on environment variable. And in this one, you see under system variable, there is something called path. So you have to tell the path where the executable files are there for MySQL. So you have to click on edit. So in this one, here you have to hit on new and paste the path. Now where the files are, let me show you. Let's go to this PC, C drive, program files, and then inside this you would see something called MySQL. There are 3 folders. You are going to click on MySQL server, and then there is something called bin, and this is where your executable exe files are there. All the executable files, DLLs and everything are there. I need to copy this path. Now let's go back to the environment variable, click on new, and here you have to paste the path. Now what this environment variable will of help is the command prompt knows where the executable files for MySQLs are present. And then I'm going to click on OK, I'm going to click on OK, and I'm going to click on OK 3 times. Now see the magic. Now if I open command prompt, okay, this is the Windows command prompt, and here I'm typing the command MySQL hyphen version. So now it is recognized and it told you MySQL version 8.0.41 for Windows 64 is available. Now let us start the Windows server. Let me maximize. How do you start the MySQL server? Now for this, all you have to do, simply type MySQL and then your user. You remember the admin user was root, and then hyphen P stands for password. Hit on enter. It will ask you to enter the password. Let me enter the password. Now you can see it said, welcome to MySQL monitor. Commands end with so and so. Your MySQL connection ID is so and so. So it's all got started. Now the MySQL server is running. Let's see how to get started with MySQL. First of all the things which were open previously, I'm just trying to close it so that if you have to start fresh, how do you start it? Type MySQL, and then there are two things. MySQL shell is this one. We don't need it. I'm going to close that. And the other one is MySQL Workbench. So shell and Workbench. So I need the Workbench. So let's open it. This is how the instance would look like. Now by default, you would have a MySQL connection. If you click on it, it is going to prompt you connect to MySQL server. You have to enter the password, and this is the password you have created during the installation. So I'm going to enter the password, and then you can also hit on save password for the vault and click on OK. Now for now I'm leaving it as it is, and this is how a query is going to open. The query table open, you might see it blank. This is how the query table is going to open. This is one way. Let me close this. In case you do not see this MySQL connection, you can click on this plus sign. You can give it a name. For example, I'm going to give it a name called local connection, something like this. Now once I give a name, then there is something called a password. Here you can enter a password and click on OK. And I'm going to click on test connection. So you can see it said successfully made the MySQL connection, information related to this connection so and so. So this is how you can click on OK and you see a connection. You can also open like this. It's up to you how you would like to manage and open your connection. And this is also here you can write your queries. Once you are on the MySQL Workbench, couple of things you might be interested is click on preferences and the font and colors. If you would like to increase the font, see it initially you might see value 10 here. I have increased it to 20 just to make sure the whatever I write here appears little bigger and better. Now the very first thing here we are going to learn is creating a database. Now where do you find if the databases are already available? Look at something here called schemas. You can click on the schemas and see if there are any databases currently available. By default, you see something called sys, and there are few things here: tables, views, stored procedure, and functions. These are the default ones. No need to do anything with them and leave it as it is. They are required for the MySQL. Now, looking at the screen, you see there are many things. Now, I don't need the SQL additions box here. So here you can click on the small icon and reduces. So now you only have this query where you will be writing your queries. The very first query we are going to write is to create database. Now create database, you have to simply say create, and then you have to say database and provide name of the database. For example, I'm going to say my first DB or test DB, for example, test DB. After you have written your first query, the SQL query, only thing you have to do is click on this execute the selected portion of the script. Okay, click on this, and then you will see create database test DB. One row affected, that means it has created. On the schema on the left hand side, if you refresh this button, you will see your test database has been created, and these are the by default you get it: tables, views, stored procedure, and functions. All of this we will learn, but right now if you see, if you go to the table is actually blank. There won't be anything because we just created a database and it will have its own set of things. A database is supposed to have tables, views, stored procedure, and functions. By default, these 4 sections you get. The next thing we are going to see, how can you drop a database or delete a database. Right now I have created testdb and I don't need this database. How can you write the query for it? For this, all you have to do, instead of saying create here, you simply say drop. And after you return the query, you have to mention the existing database name. Let's start it from the beginning. Let's say drop database, and then you have to give the name of your database. All I have to do, simply hit on this particular execution, let it execute, and once it is executed, it says drop database testdb, 0 rows affected. So when you refresh, it might automatically leave, or if you refresh, it should go away from this schemas option. Now let's see how you can create a table. In the previous exercise, we have dropped the table. Let's drop the database. Let's create the database once again. Create database, and then you write the database name, which is testdb, and I'm going to execute this. So once it is created, refresh the schema in the schema tab, and then you see your test database. Now once your test database is created, next thing, I want to create a table. I'm going to show you multiple ways to create tables. Okay, the first thing you need to know, you have to use the database name. So I'll say use, and the database name is testdb, and then use a semicolon. Below this, type create table. You want to create a table, so create table and start, give a space and start the parenthesis and close the parenthesis. Here within the parenthesis, you have to write your next set of things. So what is that? So here first you have to provide, after writing create table, you have to provide the table name. The table name is, let's say, employee table. I'm saying EMP table. And here, just to keep it simple, we will start with the very first one is the employee ID, and provide the data type of the employee ID. So this has to be an integer kind of a data type. So you will write int and put a comma here and hit on enter. Next thing, let's store employee name. Now employee name is a character, right? These are the characters. So simply say char, character. This is a different data types. Now with this, your code is complete. Let's create only 2 columns. So create table, employee ID integer, employee name character. Now let us execute this. Once executed, if you refresh, you will see the tables now has something called employee table. Do you see this employee table? And if you highlight this employee table, there's a small icon here. If you click on this icon, you see the employee ID and employee name got created. And here in the output also, it showed you create a table, employee integer, employee name. It has been successful. So if it is successful, you get a green tick mark. So this is one way of creating. Let's say I want to remove this table. You can right click here and there is something called drop table. You can use this, or you can also write the query. So for now, let's simply drop it without query. I dropped it. And then you close this one, tab here. So this is one way of creating table. You saw it. Now let me copy this code. What if I don't use used table? use a database and then write it. Instead of that, there is also another way. The another way of creating a table, let me copy paste. And here before, wherever you write the table name, before that, you can simply say the database name. So let's say test DB is my database name, test DB.employee table. And if you execute this particular query, you see the table has been created. The table got created here. And if you refresh, you should be able to see the table is there. This is the second way. What is the third way? Let me right click and drop the table. Drop now. Now what I'm going to do, let me remove the code. The other way is you can double click on this test DB so that the test DB is highlighted, and then write your code and execute. So these are three different ways you can create a table. So you can see the table has been created. If I refresh it, you'll be able to see the table is created here. If you click on this, you'll be able to see the view all of the table. So these are the three different ways in which you can create your tables. Next, let's learn the code of creating table from the existing table. So here we already created an employee table with two simple columns, employee ID and employee name. Now what if I want to create a copy of this table, a similar copy of a table from the existing table? For that, how to write the query? First of all, you want to create a table. So definitely the keyword is create, and you want to create table. So create table, simple. And then after you say create table, you have to provide a name, right? Create table, what is the name of the table? So here I am going to say employee table copy. I want to create a copy of it as, and here I want to select the columns. So what are these columns I want to use? So I'll say select employee ID. Here you can see employee ID is the column and employee name is the column. So whatever the number of columns you need, you can just type there. Employee ID, employee name, from which table you want to copy. So here I'm going to create a table and I'm saying select few columns from the existing employee table. So here is the employee table. Now with this, after writing it, all I have to do is simply execute this. So when I execute, what happened? Create table, employee ID, employee name, this is got created. And how do I see it? If I refresh this particular schema, here you see there is another copy got created, employee table copy, and there are columns, employee ID and employee name. So this got created a new copy, and this is employee table copy. And here you can see employee ID and employee name, the two columns got created. How will you drop a table? For example, employee table copy I have created. I want to drop it. Drop means deleting it completely. So I'll say drop table, and then you have to provide the table name, employee table copy, whatever the name of your table is, and then execute. So when you execute, you see the drop table executed successfully. And here if you see, the employee table copy which was there earlier has been removed. Our table which we have created called employee table is currently blank. You see there is no data. How do I insert data into a existing table? To insert a data, you need to remember the word insert. You have to insert means you have to enter the data into it, right? So insert. Insert into, and then you have to provide what is the table name where you would like to insert the data into. So the table name is employee table. Now once you mention this, now you have to also specify the columns. To specify columns, you will use the parenthesis and check your column names in the table. So you have employee ID as one column, employee name as second column. Let's type employee ID, comma, and the next one is employee name. You have to specify your column names correctly. After that, you would like to enter the values into it. So simply use this keyword values, and then again use parenthesis. And what are those values you have to use? Let's say the employee ID is 1. Okay, let's keep it simple. 1, comma, and the name of the employee is, you have to put it in the string because it's a string or a character. So let's say John. Okay, you can write some name. Now once you have written, your query is complete. Now let's say I would like to insert one more row. Let's say 2 rows we want to try. Okay, I'll copy this, hit enter, and let's enter my name. Let's say Rakesh, and here it is Kumar, and the ID is 2, for example. Okay, so we have entered 2 different values. Let's execute this. So once executed, insert into employee table, error code data too long for column employee name at row 1. When I executed, you see I got an error. Insert into employee table, employee ID, employee name, value 1, John Doe, error code 1046. Data too long for column employee name at row 1. So that means initially while creating the table, I have used the data type as character for employee name. For employee ID, we have said integer, and for this we have said character. Now there is something we have to modify. To modify this, first of all, let me copy or cut the code and keep it in a notepad so that I can use it later. Now we have to alter the table. So to alter the table, simply say alter table and your table name, employee table. Okay, and I want to modify certain column. So what is the column name I want to modify? I want to modify the column name employee name. To what? I want to modify it to var character 50. Okay, so that means it can take up to 50 characters. That is the meaning. What I'm going to do, I'm going to first execute this particular code. So you can see it got executed. Alter table, employee table, modify employee name var character 50 has been completed. Once this is done, let's go back to our notepad. Let me copy and paste the code. Let's execute it now. Okay, now you can see it has got a green tick mark and got executed. Now let's see the data actually. So what you can do, you can click on this employee table and click on this grid. Now you can see it has got 2 data, John Doe. Employee ID is 1, employee name is John Doe, employee ID is 2, the employee name, the other employee name is Rakesh Kumar. What if I would like to delete all this data, all the data that are present in the employee table? However, I don't want to delete the table itself, just the data inside them. So for that, what query I should write, or how should I execute the query? So let me first close these tabs. Let me remove the previous written code. So for this, the new syntax that you need to learn is the truncate. Truncate. Okay. So truncate and delete, there are 2 different things. Truncate and drop. Drop means it's dropping the entire table. Now truncate means it is only going to remove the data inside it. So truncate table, and your table name is employee table. That's it. Now when I do this, currently if you see, this has got data. Okay, before I execute, you see it has got the data. Now all I'm going to do, I'm going to execute this now. Okay, now truncate table executed. Do I have my database, my table? Yes, I have my table. No problem with my table. Do I have the data inside the table? Let me open it again. You see the table data has been removed. So truncate means it deletes all your records from the table without deleting the table itself. I want to add new columns. So before I add, let's have a quick look at the table. The table, if I click on this small grid, the table has got employee ID and employee name. I would like to add one more column, let's say email ID. Okay, now before inserting the email ID, let me do certain alteration. What I will do, let us first enter few data into this two and then add a new column just to see if it is impacting the existing data or not. Okay, so let's do that. Let's close this. And then how do you insert data? Do you remember? Insert, right? Insert into, and the table name you have to say emp, what is the employee emp table, right? Employee table, yes. Insert into, and then in parenthesis you have to use the column name. So the existing column name are employee id comma employee emp name, employee name, and then I have to say values, and within the parenthesis let's enter the very first value. For example, let's say 1 is the employee id comma, and the name within the quote I have to write, so I'll say John Doe. So all I have to do, simply copy this row and I'm going to paste it again, and here I'm going to change the values to something else. It's a 2 and I'm going to say Rakesh Kumar. Rakesh Kumar. Now after I have written this, ensure you have put a semicolon here because it's a new line. I'm going to run the query. Okay, so insert into completed. Now if I refresh and try to open the table, you see employee ID and John Doe has come. At this point, let's try to add a column and see what happens. Now to add a column, you have to remember you are altering the table, right? So remember the word alter, you are altering. So first you start with the keyword alter. Alter table, and you have to provide the table name employee table. So here I would like to add column. So simply add, it's more like English word, right? See, add column. You don't have to literally remember. It's more of a practice. If you do, it'll come. Anyways, add column. And here I have to tell the what kind of a column name it is. What should be the name of the column? So it is a email ID. And what should be the data type of it? So character, variable character, var character. And I'm going to say it can have 100 characters, for example. I'm just putting a number. That's it. Simple code. And I'm going to execute this. And this is completed. Now let's refresh it. And here in the employee table, let's see it. Now if you see it, here you can see employee ID John Doe has come, but here the email IDs are blank for both the values. Now the time has come to enter the email IDs in the table. Now John Doe doesn't have an email ID, Rakesh Kumar doesn't have an email ID. I have created this email ID just now. So how can I enter values here? Now to update values, here the keyword that you'll be using is update. So update, you want to update the employee table. And then you would like to set certain email ID. So update employee table, set your column name, which is email ID. Okay, this column name, the email ID column. Let's click on this. So email ID is the column where I would like to set certain value. So set email ID is equals to, and whatever that value is, for example, it's john.doe at the rate, let's say test.com. Okay, I have entered certain email ID. Now here I have to say where employee ID is equals to 1, because otherwise how it will know where should I enter the email ID, for Rakesh or for John Doe? There could be multiple values. So here I'm giving something saying where employee ID is equals to 1. Now when I do this and try to execute the query, what is happening? There is an error. The error code is 1175. You are using a safe update mode. So you are getting an error. There is an error, right? So to how what can be done? Okay, so let me bring it up. So here you see there is an error. So how can I avoid this kind of an error? Let's see. So the concept now I'm going to teach you is the primary key concept. So what is the primary key? Every table should have a primary key. We heard about in the relational database, the primary key is the unique identifier of that table. Okay, so in this table, employee ID becomes our primary key because that remains unique. The name can be another person can have the same name, but his employee ID would be different. So that means we have to create a primary key. Now to create a primary key, what is the code we have to do? So you cannot directly update, that we have learned. If the table doesn't have a primary key, because while creating we haven't created a table with a primary key. So now the table was already created. Now how do you alter it? So again you will go with the word alter table and you will write your table name, and then here you would like to add the primary key. Okay, and what should be your primary key? That we have to define by writing the parenthesis. So here the primary key is employee ID. Okay, I have written the employee ID column name. Let's execute this. So once executed, it is successful. Alter table, employee table, add primary key is successful. Okay, so once this one is successful, now what I will do, I'll write that code for the update code. What is the code we have written? Update the table name, update the employee table, and then set the email id is equals to your value. For example, john.doe@test.com, close, where, right, where employee ID is equals to 1. That simple it is. So when I run this now, let's see what was the output. So here if you see update employee table set, now there is a success. Now what we will do, we'll close this old one and try to open the table once again. So here you can see johndoe.test.com has been entered. Now let's say I have to do for Rakesh. I will simply change it to 2, and here I will say, let's say Rakesh, and here I will say Kumar, let's say test.com, and I'm going to execute. This also got updated. Now let's refresh it again. So you can see Rakesh Kumar has appeared. So now this is how you will be updating the column. So you learn two things: how to create a primary key and how to update the certain values. Now let's say if I would like to update the name, instead of Rakesh Kumar, it should be Rakesh K, for example. That also can be done. So here all I have to do, employee name, right? So here I will say employee name, EMP name should be Rakesh Kumar. Okay, whatever you like. Let's R. Let's make it K, Rakesh K. Okay, and where employee ID is 2. Now if I am going to execute this, so what happened? Let's see. You see, from Rakesh Kumar it has changed to Rakesh K. So likewise, this is a very, very powerful command that you should be aware of. Update and set whatever the column values you would like to set. So more you practice, more you will be able to automatically type without recalling so much. Now let's rewind everything that we have learned so far, starting from creating a database, creating a table, creating a primary key, and let's create one more thing with everything, right? All that we have learned, let's do it again. So let me close this. Now let's first of all open a query window. So how do you open a query window? Is click on under the file, you have something called here, a small icon, click on that. Okay, SQL file, and here I want to run the query. Now let's start from the beginning. Let's create a database called dbperson. So how do you create a database? You have to simply start with create database db, and I want to say persons. Okay, now I'll write everything in a single code before I execute. I'll write everything and then execute. Okay, and then I have to create a table. Now to create a table, again you'll use the keyword create table and your table name. Table name is TB. We'll start with table TB persons. And here you have to start with parenthesis. Now when you are writing multi-line code, it is you have to put a semicolon here and continue with your multi-line codes. Okay, TB persons. Now here we have to define what are the columns we need. One is we need ID, first name, last name, and age. We'll keep it simple. And the ID should be your primary key. So let's get started. So the very first thing I will do, I will give a little space or an indent, and I'm going to say ID should be integer and it should be primary and put a comma and hit enter. Okay, what is the next thing? The next thing is I need the first name. Okay, and what should be the data type? This should be a var char. Let's say I'm going to say 50 and put a comma. What is the next thing? The next thing is your last name, and I'll repeat the same thing, variable character, which can have 50 characters, up to 50 characters. Okay, comma. And what is the next thing? The next thing is I want the age. So age, let's say age, and this should be integer. Okay, so once you are done with all your columns, you just have to close the parenthesis. Before you execute, there is a very important thing. You created a database, you created a table, but you didn't tell if this table should be part of this database. Okay, that's why it is important to write this use, and then you write your database name. Okay, this is very important. Use db persons and ensure the spelling is correct, otherwise it will throw error. So db persons. So like this. Now the code is complete. Let's execute it. Let's see what happened. So here create tb persons is got created. All you have to do, refresh the schema on the left side. And here if you see, let me minimize everything so that we see things clearly. Now here you can see db persons has appeared. And inside this db persons, if I click on the table and click on this db persons and open this, you see ID, first name, last name, age, everything has come. Now it is a time to update. Let's say I'll update one value here. Okay, so this is done. Let's omit this code. For this, we'll be using insert into your table name tb persons. Okay, and what are the columns exist in this table you like to update? So one is the ID column, the next one is the first name, and the third one is last name. You're writing one by one all the columns, and this is age. Okay, now once you have written all the column names, next keyword is you have to write values, and then you have to provide those values. So what I will do, let me bring it down and say values, and here let me write those values. So what are those values? The ID I will keep it as 1, comma, space, and then the name I will keep it as, let's say, John, comma, and let's say DOE, comma, and the age, let's keep it as, let's say, 30, let's say 20. Okay, so this is how I have written all the names, 1, John Doe, 20. So this is how. Let's execute the query. Okay, it's got executed. Now let's see by opening it, and you can see one row has been inserted into the table that we have created. So we have created database, we have created table, we have inserted data into a blank table. The next thing we are going to learn is foreign key. So you can write a comment something like this, foreign key. Now what is this foreign key? Everything I am going to make it absolutely simple. You just have to follow the instructions that I'm providing here. Okay, so what is this foreign key? Before we understand foreign key, we have to create few tables. Okay, so let's begin from the start. Let's create a database. Okay, so how do you create a database? Create database, and I'm going to name it as DB business. Okay, DB business is my database. Let's execute this query and see the output. So database got created. If you refresh it, you see a DB business has been created. There's no tables at the moment. Okay, fine. Now the next thing what we will do, we will create certain tables inside the database. So for that, use the database name DB business. Okay. And inside that, let's create a table called create table and the table name. What is the table name we are going to provide? TB. Uh, let's start with customer. This is the table name. And here I'll start with a parenthesis. And below that, let's write whatever the columns we need. So what is the first column we need? Hit a tab and create the first column, which is customer ID, which should be a primary key, comma. And whenever you write this, after use DB business, ensure you have used a semicolon. Okay, that is important. If you see an error, that means something wrong on the previous line. Okay, key. After that, what you will be writing, the next thing I want is the customer name, which is supposed to be a var character, should contain few characters. I'm giving a length of 100, comma. Next, I want customer email, which is supposed to be a var character, and let it also have 100 characters max, comma. And with this, let's close it. Let's have only this many columns. So here I'm creating a table. Let's execute this. And here you see, if you refresh on your left hand side, you created a TB customer. And here the customer ID is your primary key. Similar way, let's create one more table. Again, as more you practice, more the codes will be in your fingertips. Okay. So we say muscle memory. So create table TB order. This is my next table. And in this one, hit on tab and create few columns. The very first column, I'm going to create order ID int, and this should be a primary key, comma. The next thing, I want order date, which is supposed to have a date value. So it will be date data type, comma. And then I want to have customer ID. Now you remember the very first table that we have created. If I look at the column, customer ID is also one of the column in the previous table, the customers table. Here also I'm creating the same column name, exactly the same column name and similar data type, which is an integer. So I'll leave it as integer. Now this is your foreign key. Foreign. How this foreign key is created, I'm going to show you. And the one more thing I need is order order amount. Okay, order amount, the total amount. So I'm saying order amount, and let it be decimal, and it can hold 10 10 digits and then two decimals. Okay, 10 comma 2 means you can have maximum 10 digits and then two decimals. Okay, so with this, the second table is done. Now I have introduced something called foreign key. Now how this foreign key works? So to make it foreign key, I'm going to show the example, then you will understand entirely. Right now, simply understand the syntax. For the foreign key, you have to say foreign, IGN foreign key, and within parentheses, you have to write which column you would like to make it a foreign key. So I want to make customer ID as my foreign key. So let's type that, customer ID as my foreign key. Now this foreign key, that is the customer ID, which is currently present in order table, this has to be reference to the previous table. So how do you say references? So it takes the reference from which table? The TB customer. Okay, so TB customer, and within parenthesis you write that specific column name. So customer ID is the column name. So here I'm saying customer ID. Now by doing this, ensure I forgot a comma, let's put a comma. Okay, now with this, what is happening? The customer ID column is a foreign key. That means it has a reference. That means you are creating a link. This customer ID from this table with the customer ID of some other table. So here I'm creating a reference between this customer ID column with the customer ID column of the previous table. So this is a foreign key. Now what is the usage of it? We will see. Right now we have just learned the syntax. So the table got created. If I refresh it and look for the TB order, so this is the table order. Now this table order has got a foreign key. So here if I, for the table customer, if I expand the foreign key, there is nothing. But if you expand the foreign key of the table order, you see there is a foreign key created, TB order IB foreign key 1. So it has a foreign key. So what is the foreign key? Customer ID is the foreign key. So we have got this. Fine. Now what is the use of this? For example, let me try to insert an record into the order. Insert into TB order, and we have to write all the column names. So what are the column names we have created for TB order? Order ID, order date, customer ID, order amount. So let's write it quickly. Order ID, order date, customer ID, and then order amount. So these are the columns. Close the parenthesis, hit on enter, hit on a tab, and simply say values. And here in the values, let's write the order ID, let's say 101. The order date has to be written in quote. Let's say write 2025 hyphen let's say 01 hyphen let's say 20. This is my date. Okay, comma. Next, I need to have customer ID. Let's say I'm entering a customer ID 1 here, and here the order amount, let's say 150 rupees 50 paisa. So if I do this and try to execute this, you will get an error. Look at it. And what this error says, if you can see this, it is very small, but you can try this code and see the error. It says cannot add or update child rows. A foreign key constraint fails. So it is not allowing me to enter anything because this foreign key is getting a reference to the customer table, and the customer table currently doesn't have any data. So it is not even allowing you to insert any data. So that means when you have to insert your data, the data has to be first entered in your parent table, and then you can enter data into child table by referencing that particular key. So parent and child. So the first one is a parent table, and the foreign key where you have created this, that is called a child table. So this is a child table. So first of all, we have to enter data into the parent table. So let's do it. Let's write the code. Insert into TB customer. And what are the columns it has? Customer ID, customer name, customer email. So let's write it quickly. Customer ID, customer name, customer email. Okay, these are my columns. Hit on tab and say values, and in the values let's enter. Let's say customer ID is 1, comma, customer name is, let's say, John Doe, and then comma, customer email, let's say, has to be written in quotes. Okay, john.doe @ example.com, for example. So I have written all the values. Now here what I'm doing, I'm trying to enter, let's see, something I did wrong. Customer ID, customer name, customer email. Okay, here I have to close it. Okay, now it's fine. Let's run it. So once I run it, if you see, it got successfully executed. Now this table, for example, if I open and show you, this table now has a customer ID, John Doe, this one. Now let's try to insert the data into the TB order. Okay, so let's delete. Let's write the code again. Insert into TB order. And what are the columns we have in the orders table? Order ID, date. Okay, let's do it. Order ID, order date, customer ID, order amount. Okay, so I have entered all the column names and then hit on a tab and say values, and inside this I'm entering the order ID as 101, and then comma order date. I'm putting 2025-01 and let's say 25th. Okay, comma customer ID. Here, this table has a customer ID. So I'm going to reference that this order is from John. So I'm putting customer ID is 1 and the order amount is, I'm saying, let's say 150.50. I'm putting some amount. If I execute this code now, you see insert into become successful. Now if I open the TB order and open it, and you see order ID, customer ID, and this is a foreign key, it worked fine. Now let's do one thing. Let's create one more order. Let's enter 102. Let's change the date to 26th, and the customer ID, if I make it to 2 and try to execute the code again, it's going to throw an error. Because why? Because this 2 is currently not available in TB order in the customer table. Only you have one customer whose ID is 1. So without you having a customer, you cannot have it. So first thing, in the foreign key, you need to ensure that your parent table has certain value. The primary key is present. Only then you can enter it. Only then it will allow you to enter a value. So this is about the foreign key you have learned. After this, there is a very important concept called join table. So before we get into that, let's do one thing. Let's insert few more data into the customer table. Okay, let's enter it. So let's write as many times you write it, you will learn the code. Don't try to copy paste, write it again and again. So it'll have the muscle memory, you don't have to think. It'll automatically, you'll be able to get it. So insert into TB customer, and what are the customer ID, customer name? Let's quickly write it. Customer ID, customer name, customer email, close, and hit on tab, say values, and then parenthesis, and here customer ID, let's say 2, comma customer name, let's say, give me another name, let's say Rahul Kumar. Okay, comma customer email ID, let's say r rahul.kumar@exampletest.com. Okay, something like that. So I have written one more. Now if I insert, what would happen? If I go back, let's close it and try to open this table once again. You see Rahul Kumar has come. And let's also enter one more data in the orders table. In the order, currently you have only one order. Let's put another order. So again, let's remove this and type the code, insert into TB order, and write the column names, order ID, and then you have order date, and then you have customer ID, then you have order amount. Close it and write, give it a tab, values, and inside this let's enter 102 is my second order, and the date the order was placed was on 2025 February. Okay, let's say 8th. Okay, and comma, and after that customer ID I will say 2, because in the customer table currently you have the primary key 2 has a value. So 2, comma order amount, let's say 505 rupees and 50 paise, for example. Okay, and I'm closing it. Now if I execute this, it will be accepted. Reason being, there is already a primary key in the TB customer, the customer table. It has a 2. So now if I refresh it, TB order, and try to open it again, you see it has once again created this one, order ID 102, order date, customer ID 2. So it has accepted 2 values. After this, as I said, we are going to learn a very important concept called joining the table, and what that join table gives you, the output we are going to see. To understand join, the very first thing what we will do, we will try to print what is the data there in customer table and order table. For that, how do you write? Select star from and your table name. So the actual syntax is you should always use the database name followed by your table name. This is your proper syntax. And let's say select. So if I just run this, the first one, let me show you. See, the output has come. This is the customer table. Now same thing, let's type it again. Select star from db business.tb order. Now when I do this, if there are multiple lines of query that you are writing, put a semicolon and run it. So now what happened? This is your order table. Okay, this is your customer table and this is your order table. It has an order detail with customer ID. Now, while I'm printing, is there a possibility of me creating a table which can show all the orders with customer ID is fine. I want the customer name and the email ID joint. I mean, you have to join both of the things. Okay. So whatever fields here, I want that also to appear here. So how can I do this? I want to print everything rather than referring to two separate tables and try to do a matching. Can I join them and see them at one place? Yes, that is possible. For that, we have to join the tables. So let's see how this joining of table works. Okay. So first of all, let's focus on the table which you want to see. Additionally, you want to see some of the columns from the other table, like the name and email ID you want to see. So how I can do this? So let's start writing. Now the very first thing what I will do, let me just, okay, let's have that. Let's write select. Okay. After writing select, I would specify the columns which I want. So hit on a tab and let's say I need order ID, comma, I need order date, comma, I need customer ID, comma, I need order amount, comma. Okay, this things I need. And from the other column, the customer column, I need the customer name and customer email ID. So let's write that also. So I'll say customer email I want, and then customer name I want. Okay, so let's have the customer name first and then customer email I want to have. So I've written all of them. Now the customer name and customer email, they do not belong to the order table. So below this, what you have to do, you have to join them. So first of all, let me write from, what is the table name? TB order. Now TB order does not contain the customer name. So you have to learn another thing called alias. So what I will do, I'll say TB order as O. O stands for order. Okay, TB order. So O is a alias. That means I can refer all the columns from this order table as O, and I can simply say O dot order ID, O dot order date, O dot order date, and then for below one I'm saying O dot customer ID, and for this one I'm saying O dot order amount, and this coming from the customer table. I'm going to create that alias also. So here I'm simply writing C dot customer name, and here I'm saying C dot customer email. So I've written everything. Now let's create the alias. Okay, let's close this too at the bottom so we see more space. Now I need to join. Now to join, you need the table with which you want to join. Remember, the customer ID was common in the orders table and also in the customer table. That means this column was present in both the tables. That's why I can use this customer ID to join. Now, how do you write join? So first of all, you say join. What is the table you would like to join with? You take the table name. So TB customer is my table name. Okay, and you have to join it on what key you want to join. So this order, so here also let's create an alias called C for the TB customer. So you can say as C, and then let's join it. So here I'm saying C dot Okay, that means your C represents your table. Customer ID is equals to O dot customer ID. O means your order table. So a customer ID present in both the tables. What I'm saying, you take the customer ID in the customer table and match it with the customer ID in the orders table and then join them. So this is what I have written. Let's execute this. Now when I execute it, you can see the output that has come. Now this is a joint table. So order ID, order date, customer ID, order amount coming from the orders table, and customer name, customer email, these are coming from the customer table. So practice this few times to get a hold of this entire query. Only a new thing that you have learned is using the aliases. So that means instead of me typing tb order dot order id, I am simply saying c dot order id. So this becomes a easy way of referring this column is coming from which table. If I don't have an alias, I can take the name of the table. Having an alias, the code looks much simpler and easy to read. Now let's move on to something called inner join. To understand inner join, let's do few things. TB customer that you see, this has got the customer ID 1 and 2, and there are two customers. And the order, if I go to the order table, let me open it again. Let me close this and TB order, click on this, and you can see this order has got 101, 102, and there are two customers. This is fine. This pretty plain and simple. What I'm going to do in the TB customer, let me add one more customer who has not placed any order yet, but he's a customer. So let's add one customer here. So how do you add a customer to a table? Simple, use insert into, and then you take the table name. So TB customer is our table name. And then you write all the column names that are present in the table. In the TB customer, these are the columns which are present. So let me type customer ID, customer name, customer email. So these are the columns available in the table customer. Hit enter, and here hit on a tab and say values. Let's enter the customer ID as 3, for example. Customer name, let's keep it as let me think of a name. Let's say Vivian. Okay, Vivian Ramesh, Vivian Richards, something like that. Okay, I gave a name. Now comma the customer email ID. Customer email ID, let's say brp.r at the rate exampletest.com, close the parenthesis. So here I'm inserting one more data. Let's execute the query. So once the query is executed, now let's see, it's executed. It has a tick mark. Very good. Now let's see the table. Now practice all of this as many times you want. Select start from TB table customer and then execute. Then you see the table. So this now has got, okay, let me slightly bring it, slightly reduce the size. Okay, so now you can see there are 3 customers, John Doe, Rahul Kumar and Vivian Richards. Now these 3 customers, now if you look at the order table, for example, if I say TB order, I think you have it here. Now in this order table, Mr. Vivian Richards has not placed any order yet. So the customer table has got 3 data, 3 rows of data. The order table has got 2 rows of data. So what is not present in the order table? An order from Mr. Vivian. So Vivian has not placed any order yet. That is possible. Okay, fine. Now what is this inner join concept? Inner join means two tables, what is the common in them? That is called inner join. What is common in this table and the other table? That is called inner join. Let me show you as in by writing it. Okay, so let's do one thing. Do you remember the code that we have written? Let me close it. So how do you the join code that I have told you, right? How do you, let's practice it again. So it's select, and then in the order table, what are the columns you have? Let's write it, hit a tab, and we will use alias o dot order ID, and then ensure you use a comma every time, comma, enter, o dot order date, comma, o dot customer ID, comma, o dot order amounts. Okay, and then I need from customer table, I need customer name, comma, c dot customer email. Okay, these are the things I need. And then here you have to say from your table name, TB order is your table name, and then you will be joining this with the other table. What is the other table? Customer table, the exact code what we have learned. Now what is that inner join? I will talk about TB customer. And then here I have not written inner join. Okay, I have written join. I'll tell you, just wait a second. So join TB customer, and then here I'm saying let's use some alias, TB order as O and TB customer as C, and then I'm going to join it based on what? On C dot customer ID is equals to O dot customer ID, the field which is common between both the tables. So C dot customer ID. Okay, so here you have to write the clause on C dot customer ID, O dot customer ID. Now if I run this, what it always gives you, the data which is common between both the tables. So what is common between both the tables? That is, these two orders are common. Vivian has not placed any order, so Vivian's data won't come here. So now what is this inner join? Right now I have only typed join but not inner join. So let me tell you, inner join or join are the same. So in SQL, in MySQL, so inner join and join, these both are the same. So if I click on inner join, type inner join and run it, you see the same output. Okay, now you can see the same output. Now let's do one thing. In the TB order, currently there are two orders. Now it is also possible the first customer can place one more order in a different date, correct? So let's do one thing. In this one, let's insert. So you can simply open this. So how did I open this? Let me show you from the beginning. TB order, click on this, it will open. I'm just omitting this data. And here I'm writing the query, insert into TB order. Okay, I will insert order ID, order date, customer ID, order amount. Okay, so these are the columns. Hit enter, hit a tab, say values, and let's say order ID is, let's say 103. Okay, order date, let's say he placed another order on imagine 2025. So first order he placed on January 25th. Let's say next day he had placed another order 01/26th. Okay, and then close it. And after that, the customer ID. So the customer ID is here 1. The first customer only placed two orders on two different dates, and the amount he paid for this order, let's say 600. Okay, 600.75 for example. I'm going to close the parenthesis. If I execute the code, this time what would happen is, if I use the select and try to print the table, select star from, select all the columns, star means select all the columns from TB order. If I execute the code, this time this code has got 3 rows of data, 101, 102, 103, because the first customer placed the order 2 times. Now if you run the query, the last query has given only 2 records because it had 2 records. Now if I execute the query again, you see there are three orders. Now John Doe has been repeated twice. So only what is common in both the tables based. So here the customer ID, right? Here the order, the customer ID is present in this one, and the customer ID is also present in the other one. It is only showing the common records. This is the inner join. The next concept is left join. So for example, I have a customer table. Here I have got three different customers, John Doe, Rahul Kumar and Vivian. In the orders table, Vivian has never placed an order. If you see, customer 1 and customer 2 have placed orders. But imagine the Vivian, the third customer, never placed an order yet, or he has not placed an order yet. Now what is this left join? If I am focusing on the customers and I want to print if they have made some orders or not. So this becomes my table number 1 and the order becomes my table number 2, and I'm going to do a left join. Left means all the rows that are there in the first table should appear irrespective of if they have placed an order or not. Let's see how it works. So for this, let's start writing the query. So here TB customer is my focus. So I want to know all the customers and want to know if they have placed. It's always your question would frame how you wanted to build your query. So let's get started. Simply say select. Select what? I want to select the customer. So here select. I would like to select the customer table data. So tap. What is the columns in customer table? Customer ID, customer name, customer email. So let's start writing it. So we'll use an alias c dot customer ID and ensure you use a comma, and then c dot customer name, comma, c dot customer email. Apart from this, I also need certain data from the orders table. So O dot, let's say I need order ID. Here you can see it, the column names, order ID. This I need, and then I will say O dot order date, comma O dot customer ID is anyways there. So I need order amount, order amount. So these are the things I need. Here from will become your TB customer. Your customer table is your table number 1. You would like to join this table number 1 with the table number 2. So how will you do it? Here I forgot a comma. Let's use a comma. Okay. So here O dot order ID. Fine. Now let's write something called left join. So left means, remember, the table number 1 for which you are writing this one. This is your table number 1. Whatever the data is there, how many number of data is there, that has to appear. That is a must. That is called left join. You're giving preference to the table number 1. Left join. How would you join? Left join with which table? TB order table. Okay, on, and let's use an alias here for both of them as customer C, and here I will say as O on TB. So you can say O dot customer ID, because customer ID is common in both the tables, is equals to C dot customer ID. Okay, so you can see both of them you are joining. Now it is very interesting to see what the output would come. Let's run this. Now if you run this, you see Vivian also have come here. As I said, left join means it gives you the preference to the table number 1. So here whatever rows of data were there in the table number 1 has appeared. See, Vivian Richard, even though he has not placed any order, his data is also appeared here. Do you see? And John Doe has placed 2 times the order. That's why there are 2 records of John Doe. Do you see? There are 2 records. Rahul has placed only 1 order. Let me slightly expand this so that you can see the output. Okay, so here if you see, John Doe has got 2 records, Rahul has got 1 record, Vivian has got no orders, but his record has appeared. This is called left join. You are giving preference to the first table. So practice this query as many times as you want until you have got a complete understanding how the left join works. As you have seen, the left join gives preference to the table number 1, wherein all the data that are present in table number 1 always appears. Similar way, there is also something called right join. Now it is just the opposite. The right join gives preference to the table number 2, which is your order table in this case. So if I do simply replace the left with right, you see the output. Here, how many output we had? 1, 2, 3, 4 outputs we had, 4 rows of output. The moment I do it right, it's going to prefer whatever rows that is there in the, so there are 3 rows. So the output also will be 3 rows the moment I am going to write, say right. Let's execute this and see the output ourselves. So here if you see John Doe, Rahul Kumar, and then John Doe. So let me slightly lift this output. So how many rows of data I have? 3 rows of data. That means it is giving preference to the table number 2 the moment you say right. So the table number 2 gets preference, and here how many number of rows the table number 3 had? All the rows supposed to come here. And here you can see the output has just exactly number of rows are 3, and John Doe has placed 2 orders, Rahul has placed 1 order, and here in this one Vivian has never placed an order, so his record will never appear. So it always gives preference to the table number 2. Practice this right join couple of times so that you get hang of the entire code. What if I would like to get all the combinations of data from the table number 1 and table number 2? In our case, the table number 1 is customer table and the table number 2 is the orders table. So what I have to do, simply replace this word cross, and the cross keyword doesn't take this one on, this is not required, so I am going to omit this. Let's see what happens by writing this and what kind of output can we get. If I simply run this, now you see it has given me so many different combinations of data. So if you see Vivian Richards, who has never placed an order, still I see an order ID. So your data will be ambiguity. It will blindly combine and make all combinations, possible combinations. So if you see Vivian Richards also has 102. Vivian Richards also has 103. So it is exactly making all the combinations. John even see 102, John 103, and John also has 101. Similar way, Rahul has 101, 2, and Rahul has 3. So it is making all the combinations, data combination of customer 1 table and customer 2 table, and it has given you an output which contains almost like 9 combinations. Okay, so this is what the cross join, this is how the cross join works. It won't literally checks if Vivian has placed an order. For all of that, you have your inner join, left join, right join. This would produce the more accurate results. However, if you want to still put some condition on the cross join, for example, you can still do it, but in this one we are not going to use on. Rather, we will be using something called on clause, where I am saying c dot customer ID is equals to o dot customer ID. If I'm going to run this, you see it is matching the customer ID, and now it has only given me the data which are present in both customer table and order table. So this is exactly like an inner join, how the inner join works, right? So this is more like an inner join when you put a where clause with the cross join. Now we are going to learn about self join. To learn self join, we have to go through a different example here. So let's get started, and first of all let's create a database. Do you remember how do you create a database? So to create a database, you will be typing create database and the database name. So the database name, I'm going to give it as company. Let's execute this and refresh the schemas. We can see the DB company has been created. The schema is created. After that, let's create a table. So I'll say use and db company as my database and use a semicolon. Below that, let's create a table. To create a table, again, you have to create. The keyword you have to use is create and the table and the table name. So here the table name I'm going to keep is employee underscore table. This is my table name, and then I would start with parenthesis, and here let us enter all the table names. So I would like column names. So let's keep employee underscore id as one column name, and let's make it as integer, comma, and I'll keep employee underscore name varchar, and I'm going to keep it as 100. This is the second column name, and one more I am going to have is manager underscore id, which will be the integer. So these are the three columns I want in the employee table. Now let's execute this. Execute it. Let's refresh the schemas, and then let's check the table. How will you check the table? Select star from employee underscore table, and let's execute this. So now the table has been created, but again it doesn't have any data. So let's insert certain data into it. To insert, you will say insert into, and you will take the table name. Here our table name is what? Employee underscore table, right? So this is our table name. So let's type that employee underscore table. And after that, you have to use the column names. So what are the column names we have? One is employee underscore id, and then employee underscore name, and then we have manager underscore id. So these are the things, and then you will say values. Hit enter, hit a tab, and here let's write within the parenthesis what are the values. Let's say the employee id starting from 1, the employee name is Alice, comma, and null. Because why null? Because she is the CEO of the company. So here I'll put a comment, CEO of the company. So she doesn't have any managers. Okay, fine. Now next 2, comma, the next person is Bob, Bob, comma, Bob reports to Alice. So the ID, manager ID is 1. And here let's close the parenthesis and let's write a comment. Bob reports to Alice. Okay. Now let's create the third one. The third employee whose name is Charlie, let's say. And Charlie also report to Alice. There are two people who are reporting to Alice. Okay. So let's write a comment here. Put a comma. Comment. So Charlie also reports to Alice. Done. Now let's use parentheses again. Let's write 4 and one more. Let's say the next person is David. David is the employee, and David reports to Bob. Okay, the second employee. So here I would say David reports to Bob. Okay, good. Now let's create one more last employee, 5, comma, and let's say Eileen, and Eileen reports to, let's say, Charlie. Okay, Charlie. So here Eileen reports to Charlie. So now we got a complete series of employees. Now what we have to do, simply execute this query, and then let's see the table. Select star from employee underscore table. Now let's execute this. So you can see we now have a table which shows us different employees and different manager IDs. Now let's say I'm asking you a question. What is the question? I'm saying create a table, okay, which should show, give a space, table which should show the employee name and manager name. So this is the requirement. So single table you have. From this you also know, for example, if I ask you who is the manager of Charlie, you can easily see and tell, okay, Alice. But how would you write the query? So the table should finally show me employee names and manager names, not ID. I need the names. So this is where you will learn the self join. This is the concept of self joining. You are joining the same table and trying to create an output. Okay, so let's see how to write this. Okay, let's slightly minimize this or bring it down. Okay, now let's see how do you write this. So for that you will go with the select query. Okay, select, and you want to select the employee name, right? So here let me use the alias called E1. We will create this alias later. Now I'm simply saying E1 employee underscore name as employee name. Why am I saying employee name? Because I want employee name and manager name, two things I want. So you can write the way you want. Okay, so let's say employee name, comma. Next, I'm giving a little tab and writing here E2. E2 would be another alias. I'll create that employee underscore name as manager name. Because see, the employee name and the manager name are all there in the same column, right? But you would like to create an output which will have two columns. But again, the values are again there in the employee name column itself. Okay, so that's where you would be doing the self join. Now after this, let's go back and say from which table, employee underscore table as E1. Okay, so here I'm saying the alias is E1. After this, let's write left join. So there is no keyword called self join. It is left join, and here you will be using the same table, employee table, as E2. Okay, so until here it should be clear. You are joining the same table, but the condition is what important. Okay, so here let's have a look at the employee table. So what I'm going to do, the manager ID is equals to employee ID. For example, Bob is reporting to 1. So the manager ID of the first table, both the tables are same. So manager ID is equals to employee ID. So when I do this condition, so 1 means what? Here it will find Alice. Here for example 2. 2 means what? Bob. Here for example 3. 3 means what? Charlie. So like that is going to show us the table. So here I think I made a mistake. Here the employee ID is supposed to be 5 and I did not define a primary key. That's okay. You can rectify that. However, let's see the output of this. So here I have written E2 on, and then the very first thing, the condition is important here. Okay. So first E1. E1 means your first table, this one, from where you are actually pulling the data. So E1 manager underscore ID. So if I do it vice versa, the results will be different. So that's why this condition, how you are writing here, is important. So you are checking the manager ID of the first table with E2. Just think there are two copies of the table. Okay. So E2 dot employee underscore ID. Okay, so manager ID and employee ID. So now if I run this query, you see the magic. So what happened? Alice is null. Nobody is a manager for Alice. So here Bob, who's the manager? Alice is the manager. Charlie, whom he is reporting to Alice. Both of them were reporting to Alice, CEO. And David is reporting to Bob. And Ellen is reporting to Charlie. Do you see? So now you have created a structure and you have done a self join. Please practice it a couple of times so that you get a complete understanding of the code and how it worked. To understand union, we are going to create two tables. One is the current employee table. The other one would be the former employees table, people who have already left the company. So we'll start from the very scratch. Let's create a database called DB employee. Okay, I created a database. Let's execute the code, refresh the schemas, and here we have got DB employee. Inside this, let's create two tables. One is the current employee table, and the second one is former employee table who left the organization. For this, let's use db employee and then colon, use a colon, and then inside that let's say create table tb current employee, and inside that let's have all our columns. What is our first column? Let's start the parenthesis here, hit enter, and let's have the first column, which will be employee id integer primary key. Okay, primary key. So this is one, and then I will need employee underscore name. This is our second column, and then next I would have department name. So employee underscore dpt. Okay, I'll keep, and I'm closing the parenthesis. This is what I've created. So instead of semicolon, it should be a comma, comma, and done. Now let's execute this first one. After this, let's refresh and see if the table got created. Table, okay, and you have the columns of the table, TB current employee. Similar way, the same thing, I would replace the current word with with the former, and I'm going to execute the code. Now let's refresh, and you see the former employee table also got created. Now what we will do, we are going to enter data into the current employee table. To enter data, you will say insert into, right? Insert into your table name, which is TB current employee. What are your columns exist in your table, which is employee ID, employee name, and employee department. These are the three columns that exist. And then I'll say values, and in the values, let's start entering the values. How do you enter? Use a parenthesis. So employee ID, let's imagine one comma, and the name, imagine Alice. Okay, and the department, let's say department, let's say IT. So we'll create something, let's say IT. She was from IT. Close. And here after this, use a comma, and then let's do the second one, two, and let's say Bob is our second employee who was from HR, for example, HR department. Okay, comma, let's have one more employee, let's say three dot, let's say Charlie, and Charlie is from, imagine, finance. Okay, finance department, let's say. So like that, you have created few employees in the current employee table, for example. Okay, execute, and then after execution, Control X, and I'm going to say select star from TB current employee, execute to see the data. So you have Alice, Bob, and Charlie. Okay, so you have got three different rows of data entered. Now the same thing what we will do, we are going to minimize all of this, close this, and the exact code that we have written for insert into the first one, all we will do, instead of saying the current, here I'll say former, and here let's add some two names. Let's say fifth employee who was let's say David, who was from IT, and the sixth employee who was, let's say, Eileen from HR. Okay, these two employees, imagine they have left the organization. Okay, imagine these two employees left the organization. I'm going to execute the code, And after execution, let's check select star from TB former employee. Let's execute this and you see David Allen. Now there are two tables in front of you. One is the former employee, the current employee. Now what union does, it combines both the columns, both the tables into one, and it also have the capability of removing the duplicates. Okay, so first of all, let's see how the union works. So first of all, I'm going to say select star from TB, our very first table, which is current employee, TB current employee. This is the table, and then I'm going to make a union with the other table, star from TB. Of course, your columns and everything should match. TB current TB former employee. So I have two things now. If I execute both the things, now you see what happened: Alice, Bob, Charlie, David, Ellen. So all of this thing have come, including the former employees. Fifth and sixth were former employees, including them. All of them has appeared. Okay, because we have a primary key. Again, it won't allow you to you know have duplicates. But let's create something. For example, what I will do the insert into, and here imagine I'm having one. I'll try to replicate Alice here. Okay, uh, Alice IT department, delete. In the former employee, I'm trying to enter this data. Okay, let's execute this, and then let's say select star from EB former employee, execute. Now what happened, you have Alice also here, and you also have Alice in the current table. Just trying to see if the duplicate is getting removed or not. Okay, let's see that. Let's again write it, select star from TB current employee, union select star from TB former employee. Let's execute this. So now what happened, you see the Alice was there actually twice. You see the duplicate also has been removed through the union. So it shows every unique record and combines from both the tables, table 1 and table 2. To understand union, we are going to create two tables. One is the current employee table. The other one would be the former employees table, people who have already left the company. So we'll start from the very scratch. Let's create a database called DB employee. Okay, I created a database. Let's execute the code, refresh the schemas, and here we have got DB employee. Inside this, let's create two tables. One is the current employee table, and the second one is former employee table who left the organization. For this, let's use DB employee and then colon, use a colon, and then inside that, let's say create table TB current employee, and inside that let's have all our columns. What is our first column? Let's start the parenthesis here, hit enter, and let's have the first column, which will be employee ID integer primary key. Okay, primary key. So this is one, and then I will need employee underscore name. This is our second column, and then next I would have department name. So employee underscore DPT. Okay, I'll keep, and I'm closing the parenthesis. This is what I've created. So instead of semicolon, it should be a comma. comma, and done. Now let's execute this first one. After this, let's refresh and see if the table got created. Table, okay, and you have the columns of the table, TB current employee. Similar way, the same thing, I would replace the current word with with the former, and I'm going to execute the code. Now let's refresh, and you see the former employee table also got created. Now what we will do, we are going to enter data into the current employee table. To enter data, you will say insert into, right? Insert into your table name, which is TB current employee. What are your columns exist in your table, which is employee ID, employee name, and employee department. These are the three columns that exist. And then I'll say values, and in the values, let's start entering the values. How do you enter? Use a parenthesis. So employee ID, let's imagine one comma, and the name, imagine Alice, okay, and the department, let's say IT. So we'll create something, let's say IT. She was from IT. Close. And here after this, use a comma, and then let's do the second one, two, and let's say Bob is our second employee who was from HR, for example, HR department. Okay, comma, let's have one more employee, let's say three dot, let's say Charlie, and Charlie is from, imagine, finance, okay, finance department, let's say. So like that, you have created few employees in the current employee table, for example. Okay, execute, and then after execution, Control X, and I'm going to say select star from TB current employee, execute to see the data. So you have Alice, Bob, and Charlie. Okay, so you have got three different rows of data entered. Now the same thing what we will do, we are going to minimize all of this, close this, and the exact code that we have written for insert into the first one, all we will do, instead of saying the current, here I'll say former, and here let's add some two names. Let's say fifth employee who was let's say David, who was from IT, and the sixth employee who was, let's say, Eileen from HR. Okay, these two employees, imagine they have left the organization. Okay, imagine these two employees left the organization. I'm going to execute the code, and after execution, let's check select star from TB former employee. Let's execute this, and you see David Allen. Now there are two tables in front of you. One is the former employee, the current employee. Now what union does, it combines both the columns, both the tables into one, and it also have the capability of removing the duplicates. Okay, so first of all, let's see how the union works. So first of all, I'm going to say select star from TB, our very first table, which is current employee, TB current employee, this is the table, and then I'm going to make a union with the other table, star from TB. Of course your columns and everything should match. TB current TB former employee, so I have two things now. If I execute both the things, now you see what happened, Alice, Bob, Charlie, David, Ellen. So all of this thing have come, including the former employees, fifth and sixth were former employees, including them, all of them has appeared. Okay, because we have a primary key, again, it won't allow you to you know, have duplicates. But let's create something. For example, what I will do the insert into, and here imagine I'm having one. I'll try to replicate Alice here. Okay, uh, Alice, IT department, delete. In the former employee, I'm trying to enter this data. Okay, let's execute this, and then let's say select star from EB former employee, execute. Now what happened? You have Alice also here, and you also have Alice in the current table. Just trying to see if the duplicate is getting removed or not. Okay, let's see that. Let's again write it. Select star from TB current employee union select star from TB former employee. Let's execute this. So now what happened? You see, the Alice was there actually twice. You see, the duplicate also has been removed through the union. So it shows every unique record and combines from both the tables, table 1 and table 2. To understand group by, I'm going to create another table called sales table. Just to show you, here we are creating a database called DB sales. And in the step 2, we are going to use the database and create a table inside the database. This contains sales ID, the product name, the category name. For example, product name is laptop, category is electronics, and the sales amount. Right? And here we are entering few details. Let's say table, which is a furniture category, phone, which is electronics category, headphone, which is electronics category, and their prices. Okay, so we have entered the data here, insert into, and we are going to create. So let me run this code. Okay, you can see the code entirely, and let me refresh, and tables, sales, and the thing is created. Okay, you can take a pause here and then create this. Now imagine once it is created, let's try to check the table how it appears. Select star from sales. Now if I execute this, you see this is how the table is appearing. So you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sales IDs. And one thing, did you notice we are incrementing the sales ID in that code? Go slightly back and see, we are incrementing the entire sales ID automatically. This is a primary key and it's an auto increment. Product name, category, and sales amount. Now what is this group by? Let me show you. For example, I'll tell you, hey, do one thing, give me category wise. For example, electronics, what is the total sales? Furniture, what is the total sales? I want only two columns, the category and the sale amount in that category. So electronics means you will sum 1200, 800 and electronics, and you will say this is the sum. Furniture, you will 300 plus 150, you will say 450 is the sum. So how can you do this? For this, the group by function is quite useful. It is pretty simple. Let's see how it works. Okay, so simply select. Now what I want category. So you take the name of your column, what you need, category, okay, comma, and then you need sales amount. It should be sum of in that category, right? So sum and sales underscore amount. Okay, that's it. Pretty simple. From sales, and here we'll be using the group by function. So group by what? Category. You should group it by category. So you'll group and do the sum of the sales amount. Pretty simple. And if I execute this, I think I made something wrong. Is it sales amount or sale amount? Control X, select. So you can also see it from here. What is wrong with that code? Say sale amount, okay, not sales amount. Let's execute this. Now you can see how the output has come. Electronics, this much is the amount. Furniture, you have sold this much amount. Additionally, you can also do something. Let's say I want to see how many items were sold, total count of items. So here, what I can do count of rows. So here the star I am going to write within the parenthesis is indicates the rows. Okay, count star means count of rows. Now if I and you say something, right, as um, count of items sold, something like that. So if I run it, you see count of items sold 3 2, some sale amount so and so. So this is how the entire, you can always write as, okay, for example here it's see some sale amount is coming. Here I'm going to say as sales amount, execute, and now you can see however you want, you can just write it. See, category, count of items sold, sales amount. So this is the very important function that you have to learn is group by. Pretty easy. Take the name of the columns and count the column that you want. If you want the count of the rows, count star, count the column of what you want. For example, sales amount we were trying to submit. So take that name from the table, group by, and the column name you would like to group by. Imagine you have completed the group by. After doing group by, you have got the categories and the sales amount. Imagine there are like many categories. Like here we have only two. Imagine there will be hundreds of categories. I would like to know how many of such categories are performing low. For example, my low criteria is less than 500. So all I have to do, this is more like filtering your group by. After you have done the aggregate and you have got the output, you still would like to filter and understand few more data points. Now for this, all you have to do simply know the keyword having. This is a clause having sum and use the exact column here, sum sale amount. So I'm going to simply copy paste and then I'm going to say less than 500. Okay, so if I say less than 500 and try to execute this, you see what happened this time. I got 450. Let's say I would like to say the furniture is performing low. That means let's say greater than 500, greater than 500, and run this. So I see electronics is performing good. Imagine you have multiple such categories. Now with the having clause, it's more like a filtering after you have done a group by. Okay, you cannot say where. Here you have to use having. Where some sales amount, no, after group by you should be using having some sale amount greater than 500. This is one example of using the having clause. What is a case statement? Let's see with an example. Here I'm using the DB sales database and I'm creating a simple table called orders table. This has got order ID, it has got customer name, it has got order amount. Pretty simple table. Insert into, and these are the values I'm inserting. We can create this simple table. So let me execute this particular query, and there is some error. You have an error. You have an error in your SQL 1064. Check the manual. Okay, let's run it again. Okay, this time it got executed, some problem. So now if you see, the orders table got created, columns, and you have all this. Now let's do one thing. Let's use a select query from orders, and you can do control enter. So this is how the table looks like. Okay, it has got some order amount, it has got some this one. So 1 2 3 4 Alice and robot. How I am going to use this case statement, let me show you. Let me close this. So here, so what are the things I want? The column that you want, you have to first define it. So select, so I'll simply delete this, select, and I'm going to use a tab, and I'm going to say I need order ID, Then I need customer name. Then I need order amount. These are the three things I need, comma. Now here you'll use a case. So how this case work? Right case, I'm hitting on tab, and here I will say when the order amount, when order underscore amount is less than 100, then you categorize this as small order. Small order. Hit enter. No comma written here. So then again I'm writing when order underscore amount is between 100 and 500, 100 and 500, then you categorize this as medium order. Medium order. Okay, and then I'm saying when, or else simply say else. Else categorize it as large amount. Okay, large amount. So this is what the case statement looks like. Now once you have written the case statement, you have to also end the case, right? So end, and simply say end as, and the new column is going to create. This is a order amount category. So small, medium, large, this is the order amount category, right? So it's a large order. Instead of saying large, or simply write small, medium, large, okay, instead of writing order. Okay, small, and this I will say medium and large. So end as, so you would like to give a very specific column name. So I'll say order amount category. This is my name. Now here I have to say from which table, orders table. Okay, orders table. So this is one single statement, select order ID, customer name, order amount. Case, when order amount less than 100, then you say it's small. When 100, between 100 and 500, say medium. Anything else, you say it as large. And as order amount. This is a new column getting created. Now let's do a control enter and see how the output coming. Now if you see 1, 2, 3, these three columns were from the original table. Here I'm adding one more column with the case statement by categorizing them small, medium, large because this is greater than 500, 150 which is between 100 and 500, so medium. So this is how this would be pretty useful statement, the case statement, when you like to categorize your current table with something else based on certain values. So only thing you have to remember, after you have written all the column names, you write case and then when order amount, and this is how you write the condition. You create a new column name and you say from which table. This is the code for case statement in MySQL. When you are dealing with large amount of data, large number of rows of data, this limit becomes pretty useful. You cannot directly apply the select query. For example, select star from your table name, let's say orders. Now imagine this has got millions of records and you simply execute may not work in the real-time scenario because it will take a lot of time to query and show you the data. There are millions of record. Now this becomes very important for during learning. It's fine because you have limited data, but in the real environment, in the production environment, you would have millions and millions of records. So simply executing select star from orders might not help you many times if you want to just have a look of the data, how the data is, right? So it is always important to use a limit. For example, here I have how many rows of records, 1 2 3 4. Let's say I would like to say limit 2. So that means I'm telling the SQL query control enter that you only show me 2 data, you only show me 100 data, you only show me 50 data, so that once you have an idea of the data, how the data is, what kind of data is inside the table, you can start writing your query what you really need. So having a look and view of that table is important, and this clause becomes very important in the production environment. Limit, just remember it's a limit, and you provide a number to it. You don't have to write always like this. You can also write in single line. For MySQL doesn't matter. Okay, for example, if I write something like this and try to execute, still it's going to work. Doesn't matter how you're going to write it. It's all about writing the statement, and the statement will end with a semicolon. That means the statement has completed here. That is how it works. Let's try to understand how the min max work. I'm just using the previous orders table, and here you have the order ID, customer name, and order amount. Let's say I would like to understand what is the minimum order amount, what was the maximum order amount. In that case, how do you write the min max is what we have to learn. So we will say select and tab, and here I'm going to say min and use the column name. So what is the column name? Order amount, and here as mini, or I'll say min order amount. You are creating your own column. Okay, and then max order amount as max underscore order amount. So here just use a comma and then hit enter, and then I'm going to say from the table name, orders table name. Okay, that's simple it is. Now if I'm going to execute this, control enter, and you see the minimum order in that table was 50 and the maximum order in that table was 700. This min max would be pretty useful in many queries based on the need that you're going to execute in your environment. So remember, it's pretty simple: min and max and the column name you want, and the column name, once it has queried, what column name would you like to give onto the header. So minimum order amount, maximum order amount. Here you see the data. Let's get an example of count, average, and sum. First of all, let's use a table. This table you may be already having because we have covered in the previous exercise. So let's write the query. Let's see what is there in the table first. Select star from cells, control enter, and you see this is the table how it looks like. Okay, it has got some 5 items: laptop, electronics, sale amount. This is what it is. Now let's say my purpose here is to use the count, average, and sum. So how do I use it? So let's get started. Let's write select and then hit on tab, and I would like to get the count of a sales. So total 5 sales has happened, for example. So for this, when you say count of rows, you have to use count star and then whatever the column name you would like to create. So it is count underscore sales, or sales count, you can say sales count. Okay, now I would like to use the average. So average means your column should be an integer column where you would like to really apply this. So sale amount, so sale, ensure your spelling is correct. Okay, as sales average, for example. Okay, now when you write multiple lines here, ensure you use a comma and comma, and let's say I would like to do sum. So sum sale underscore amount as sales sum, for example. Okay, so these are the 3 things I want. Hit enter, backspace, and here I'm going to say from which table, sales table. Okay, now there is also a column called category. There is also a column called category. Okay, now we'll use that slightly later. Now let's do a control enter and see how the output is coming. So it is saying total you had 5 sales. The average of those sales are 510. Sales sum is 2550 total amount. Now let's say I would like to understand category wise. So prior to this, we have learned, I think, group by. So you'll group by the column category. Okay, Now let's enter, control enter, and see how the output is coming. Sales count 3, 2, but here I don't see the category name. So all you have to do here, hit tab and say category, comma, control enter. You see category electronics furniture, total sales I had 3. In furniture I had 2 sales. Sales average for electronics was 700 and sales sum was 2100. Furniture, the sales average were 2 to 5. See the how useful these data are, right? When you have a simple table, you're querying the data to see the data that you need for your analytics purpose. So now you can see you have learned the group by and also using the count, average and sum here. Some of the very useful operators, and or not operator. Now this one we are going to run it on the sales table. Now the sales table, if you see sales ID, product name, category, sales amount. If I'm going to ask you, get me the data whose category should be electronics and the amount value should be greater than 500. So if you see there is one which is 100, 800, 1200. So my condition is whose sale amount is exceeding 500. That is my question. That is my question. How do you write this? So first of all, you will say select start from sales table. I want all the columns. Okay. And then you'll use a where clause where the first thing is your category column should be. So here you can see the category column is here. So category is what is that? Let's say electronics. So as you know, here if you see electronics written E capital, and here I'm writing electronics in a different way. It's all lowercase. So it doesn't matter for SQL, you can still write it. So first of all, let's execute this one. So you can see it has pulled all the electronics. And here I'm going to say and sale underscore amount, right, is greater than 500. This is my end operator. Control enter. Out of 3 results now, you will see there are only 2 results which is greater than 500. This is the end. Now let's say if I want to say or, okay, let's use or operator. So here I am saying the get me all the furnitures items like chair, table, whatever the furnitures are there, and any other sale amount which is greater than 1000. Or okay, I'll use or here. So here I'm saying furniture. Okay, furniture, you get me, the category should be furniture, or the sale amount should be greater than 1000. This is my condition. So that means both of the things it will check. If I execute this, control enter. So what happened? I got all the furniture items. There are 2 items, furniture 150. Now this is not definitely greater than 1000, but because it's OR operator, it is giving you everything that is there in the first condition. So all the furnitures have been pulled. And the second condition, so both the conditions are executing. Sale amount greater than 1000. So in our table, the only value which is greater than 1000 is this one. So that's why it has pulled that value which is not a furniture, but it's electronic category, but it has pulled it. So both the condition is going to execute. And means when both the conditions are met, it's going to show you the output. Now let's see not. Okay, so not means you simply have to use not before that, and let's control enter. So you see not means it has pulled all the electronics items. So not furniture means the category is supposed to be something which is not furniture. So category electronics has come. Sell amount greater than 1000. This is a OR condition. So here we also have it, and all the electronics items has been pulled. So this is how AND or NOT operators can be used in MySQL. Let's learn the next thing, order by. So here is my sales table. Let's say I would like to see all the sales amount in an ascending order. How do I do it? Pretty simple. Write order by and your column name on which you would like to apply this. cell amount, control enter. You see, by default, this comes as an ascending when you say order by. Now, if you want in descending order, all you have to do, write this DESC, descending, control enter. You see, you got it in a descending order. Next, we are going to learn about insert into select. So this is generally used to copy the content of an existing table to a new table. Okay, so for this example, let us take this sales table itself we have been using so far. Sales ID, product name, category, sales amount. Let's say I would like to create a backup of this. So first of all, let me copy paste the code for creating a sales backup table. It is exactly having the column names like the sales table. Sales ID, product underscore name, category, and sales amount. And the name of the table is different, sales backup. Let me first execute this. Okay, execute it. Now let's sales backup. You have an error syntax to use near. I don't know why this multiple times errors are coming. Okay, now it got executed. Let's refresh and you see sales backup is created. Okay, sales backup table is created. Now I would like to use insert into select. So for this, let's use as usual how you write insert into, and then you write your table name sales underscore backup, and then you write all the column names. So what are the column name it has? Hit on this and let's write sale underscore ID comma product underscore name comma uh, category comma sale underscore amount. I'm just referring this one. Okay, so let's go select into. Now the next thing comes is values. So how do you enter the values inside this? Earlier we used to write something called values and then we used to enter it. This time we'll not use this. We'll simply say select. Okay, select star from sales. So sales has the similar structure. So I'm saying select star from sales. Let's try to execute this and see this got executed. Now let's try to see what is the data inside the select star from sales underscore backup. Control enter, and you see this time it has got all the data copied here to the sales backup. So this is the use of insert into select. Let's understand how unique works. First of all, let me use the DB employees database here. So use DB employee semicolon. After that, I'm going to write this create table. So here I'm creating another table called employee details. This will have employee ID, this will have employee name, this will have department, and this will have email ID. Now this email ID, I have written the keyword called unique because this will ensure the email address are unique. One is the primary key which would ensure that the values going there is always unique. Similar way, for any other column you would like to make it unique, like the email ID has to be unique. So here I'm using the unique clause, and then I'm saying ensures email address are, this is the comment to ensure all the values that are entered in this one has to remain unique. So let's execute this, refresh this, and let's see the employee details. Okay, so here is the employee details column and here is the email ID which has come. Once the table is created with the email ID unique, let me delete and let me use the insert into. Let me minimize this so we get to see the code entirely. So what I'm doing, insert into employee details table, and these are the columns, and then here I'm entering 1 John Doe IT, John's email ID, and 2 Jane Smith. This is the like basic I'm entering. Let's execute this. Now once executed, let's write the query select star from employee details. Now when I execute, you see both of the rows which we have entered has appeared. Now what if I try to enter the insert query once again, and imagine I'm entering the third employee, and his name is also John Doe. There are two people whose name is John Doe, but his employee ID tells you it's a different person. Let's say I'm trying to use the same email ID and try to run it. Okay, for example, if I try to run it, what would happen? You see there is an error which has appeared, and the error, if you read, you have an error in the SQL syntax, so it is not accepting. You see, if I run it multiple times, it has giving the error. Let's read this error, which is appears to be correct. Error code duplicate entry John Doe example for key employee details. So see, this error clearly tells you it cannot accept. Let's say I want to make it something like this, John Doe 1, and then execute the query. Then see, it has got inserted. So this is how the unique would help you. Let's simply see it again. Select star from employee details, control enter, and you see this time John Doe 1 has been accepted. Last time it was not accepting if your email ID is not unique. So that is the use of unique clause in the SQL query. Let's use the check constraint. What is this check constraint? Let's understand. For this, let's use the DB employee, the same DB employee, use DB employee database, and here put a semicolon, and let's say I'm going to create a table called employee underscore salary. So I'm creating a table called employee salary. Okay, so here the salary, right, the salary has to be greater than 0. So here if you see, I'm using a check constraint, and here with this constraint, what it does, the column that it's going to create, it always ensures that the salary has to be greater than 0. If you are putting less than 0 or you're putting 0, it will not allow you. So first of all, let's execute the query. Once executed, let's see if this employee salary got created or not. Okay, let's minimize everything and see the employee salary. Okay, so employee salary got created, and in this column, salary column, has a check. What is the check? The salary has to be greater than 0. So let me delete all this query and let's use a insert query. So here the very first thing I'm trying to insert is the John Doe and his salary 50,000. He's from IT, for example, and I'm trying to execute the query. So let's see what is the problem. Insert into employees, yeah, employees underscore salary, right? So let's execute this. So it got executed. Now let's see this. Okay, let me control X and then select star from employee underscore salary, control enter. I think I'm forgetting the table name, employee underscore salary, correct only, no? Select star from employee underscore salary. Let's execute again. Table db employee db employee salary does not exist. Employees, sorry, employees. See, this is the mistake I'm doing. So now you see one of the value that we have entered, right, has gone into this. Now instead of this, let me delete it, control V. In this one, let's make the salary to 0, for example, 0. Okay, and let's see what error it brings if I run this. If I run this, check constraint, employee salary underscore 2 is violated. So it is always checking. See, that can be applied to phone number. There are many things, right, where you can apply this check constraint to a very specific column. Next, try to understand the default constraint. So what is the default constraint? First of all, let's open the schema. So let's use the DB employee schema or the database. So I'll say use, sorry, use, use DB employee. This is the database. And here, let us write this specific code. So here I'm saying create a table employee, and in this employees table, there's a S here. Okay, let me have it here. And in this one, there is something a department, and by default you keep the department value as general. Getting it? So by default you create the department value as general. Let's use a semicolon here, and let's execute this. That's all. Here everything you know, create table. Here just you are applying a constraint to certain things. So here the default value, salary default is 30,000. It's starting salary, for example. By default it will have this value. So here we have used two defaults. Now let's do one thing. Let's execute this. You have an error, SQL syntax. I don't know what's the error. Okay, so I executed a couple of times and finally it has executed. 0 rows affected. Okay, so it has actually worked. Okay, now let's have a check if this table got created or not. Simply say select start from employees. So you see employee ID, employee name, age, salary, department. This got created. Okay. Now I don't know. Sometime the SQL is giving me error. It's okay. Now the table has been created. Now what I will do inside this table, let me insert certain data. So here, even though this has got how many columns? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 columns. And out of this 5 columns, I'm entering only 3 values: employee ID, employee name, and age I'm entering, and salary department I'm not entering. This may not be a right example, but again, you can think of a column where you want to enter certain default value. So in this case, here I'm not using the salary and department, only I'm sending this. Now let's execute this code. And once it is executed, okay, now let's say select star from employees, control enter. You see 30,000 in general, even though I have not entered any value, it is taking the default value. So this is the use of the default constraint. Now let's get started with dates. Now dates are very, very important. The format of the date, how do you retrieve, how do you do many manipulation with the date. This is very important. Now for this, I am going to use the DB business database. So I'll say use DB business database. Okay. And under that, let me minimize the schema, and then let's use a semicolon, enter, and I'm going to create a table called orders. This table will have order ID, order date with the date as your data type. Okay, this is the very first thing. First, you have to create a table which has the date data type. So date, so here delivery date, order when the customer placed the order and when the order was delivered. So I've got now two date columns. Let's first execute this, and then let's see if the data has appeared in the orders table. So control X, and then I'm going to say select start from orders, control enter. You see order ID, order date, delivery date has been created. Let's enter some data into this. So I'll use insert into orders, order ID. Okay, so I have got 1, 2, 3 order IDs. The order date is March 1st, 5th, 10th, and then our delivery was done on 7th, 12th, 27th. Okay, so let's execute this query. Now let's have a look of how it appeared. Select star from orders, and then you can see the data has appeared inside the table. While we will do exercises with this table, let me show you something else. For example, I want to print the current date. Print the current date. So how do I print it? So for this, I'm saying select. There is a function called cur date. Current date. That means current date is the function. So I'm going to use this, and I'm going to say current date. Okay, let's execute this. Control enter, and you see it is giving you the current date 2025-03-09. Let's get back to our previous table. Let's say select star from orders, control enter. This is what it is. Now let's say I want to identify the how many number of days we took from order date to delivery date. How many days were passed between this? I want to see that. So to do this, let's use very simple select. Okay, we'll start with select. So first is I want to see the order ID for sure. So tab order ID, order underscore ID, comma. The next thing I want to see the date difference between these two columns. So there is a function called date diff. Date diff is the function. So I'll be using this function, and within this parenthesis you have to write the columns. So the delivery date, right there is the first one. So I'll say delivery underscore date, comma, the next is order underscore date. So these are the two columns which will identify the date difference. It will work on both the columns, and then once it calculates the value, then all I'm going to say as uh, delivery days. Okay, delivery days, number of delivery days. You can type anything as you want. So hit enter, and then I am going to say from which table, orders table, control S. Sorry, from orders table. Now let's say control enter and see how it has calculated. So order ID, this one, and everything has come properly. Okay, let's say I want to also see those two columns. One is the order date, right? Order underscore date, comma, order delivery date, right? So delivery underscore date. So I want all of this, control enter. You see the output. Order ID, order date, delivery date, delivery days, it took 6 days, it took 7 days, it took 7 days. So this is how it calculates. As you have learned about the date diff, let me also show you something. For example, I want to understand which month the order has been placed. Okay, so order date we have. Let me delete. I don't need this delivery days, for example. Okay, let it be there. Doesn't matter. So which month it was placed. So what I will do, I'll use this column order date, and I am going to say month. Okay, month, and inside the month function I'm going to use the column order date, and I'm going to say as order month, order month. So this is what I'm writing. All I have to do is simply put a comma here and control enter. Now what happened here, if you see, this was placed in the March month, this was placed in the March month, this was placed in the March month. Let's say you would like to also get the year, for example. Okay, the same thing, we can just copy paste, comma, and here I'm saying instead of month I'll say year, order date as order year. Okay, that's it. So control enter, you see the year also is appearing. So last time you remember we learned this, select current date, the current date function as current date, hit enter. Now this was giving me date. What if I need the date and time as well? Then replace this with something called now. Okay, now function. So if I use now, control enter, you see you get the date and time, both of them. Let me remove this. So you see you get the date and time, both of it. Let's get back to the orders table. Select star from orders. So it has got order date and delivery date. So here I am going to teach you one final thing before we end this chapter. That is, how do I convert? For example, order date is here. So year is coming. then month is coming, then date is coming. What if I want date, then month and year in Indian format? So for that, yeah, that can be done. Now you write the select query, select, and then enter tab. What are the columns you need? I need to see the order underscore ID, comma. I need to see the order underscore date, but in a different format. So if you need a different format, you need to know the function. There is a function called date format, date underscore format, this one. Okay, so in this one you have to just put your code, okay, inside the parenthesis, and this is your column which is it's going to work on. So I want to change the format of this date, order date. How I want? Put it to apostrophes and inside the single quotes, and inside this let's write something. So how I want? First I want date, so percentage is the placeholder D. I mean, it understand this is the date, percentage D. Then I need a forward slash instead of a hyphen, for example, and then percentage M for month. Then I need a forward slash, and then I need the year, percentage Y. This is how I want. After this I'll say from orders, control enter. So now you see, okay, let's write something as order date, control enter, order as, sorry, as order date. Okay, so now let's do a control enter, and you see how the output is coming. Now here it has changed to date, then month and year, date, month, year, date, month, year. So this is how you can change. There are many things to learn there. How do you remember this date formats? There are links from if you search in Google MySQL date formats, you would find a lot of date formats. You can play with them. So I'm going to stop this course here because we have learned a lot many things. You can revise it, you can practice more, and there is never end to learning. You can always learn new things in this one. I hope this video has given you that base or the foundation to have a lot of knowledge around SQL as a beginner. And of course there will be many things as you practice more, as you face more problems or challenges, you'll be able to evolve with your experience and how to write a query smartly on SQL. Thank you. Please do let me know in the comment section how was this content and what else would you like to see in my future contents. Thank you. Let's meet once again in our next video.